I just found that this kind of one-year-old from is Peter.
Oh, yeah.
We on?
We're just having dinner with him?
No.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Daryl, you want to do the honors?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Announcements. Select Board will meet on the following dates. Our regular meeting is 6 p.m. Tuesday, October 13, and Monday, October 26, 2009. Work sessions prior to the regular meetings will start at 5 p.m. All the above meetings will be held at Town Hall unless otherwise posted. Weather observations for the month of August are posted on the front lobby at Town Hall. Town offices will be closed on Monday, October 12, 2009, in observance of Columbus Day. Flu shot clinics, there will be a flu shot clinic, regular seasonal flu vaccines, adults only 18 years or up, will be on Wednesday, September 30, 2009, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at Plymouth Town Hall. There's a fee for public, is $25, payable in cash or check. Medicare and Medicaid, you must present your cards, and a signature will be required. For more information, call Occupational Health at 603-238-2348 or visit their website at www.spearhospital.com. Additional dates for other clinics will be posted on Channel 3 and also on the town's website. Okay, we want to approve the minutes of the work session on September 14, which I have here.
Right here, Charlie, I think.
These are, okay. Work session minutes. Does anybody have any comments, suggestions, additions? There being none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 14 for the work session?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Now the minutes of the regular session, September 14. Are there any comments, changes, etc.? There being none, we have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of September 14's regular board meeting. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Under agenda review, we will entertain a motion on the PB-CAM policy, on a PB-CAM policy for the server use. Daryl?
So we'll do that now?
Well,
Yeah.
we'll do that under other business.
Okay.
Last thing on other business.
There's no appointments, updates, correspondence, visitors.
One other change, we'll be moving up airport review to visitors.
Well, we have, under the visitors, we have Mr. Gould. Would you like to come up? An airport review?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
you're on.
Paul shows as a joint presenter on this, so I'm going to let him finish and take the lead.
3 years ago, in 2007, I actually feel it started 6 years ago, but we were asked to have an airport committee started. I've been overseeing the airport, I believe, for 7 years now. And the committee was tasked to try to run it as a business and make sure that it was paying for itself, at least the budget portion that we collect each year on an annual basis. I think we've successfully done that. About 4 years ago, the airport cost $120 for us to run it after we paid off the budget. And starting 3 years ago was $8,000 extra. We ended up with $11,000 and I believe $12,000 now. So we actually have about a $40,000 nest egg in the airport funds. And I think we were right 3 years ago. I think it can be run as a business. Fred's going to update you on some other thoughts that we have in mind. And we definitely know that we're collecting our fees and we've gotten that all straightened out, and what we charge for hangars and other things that we just have go on out there. We were able to improve the airport in several different ways. Its flight path in, we were able to take the trees down that were obstructing the flight path. We were able to fix the runway itself. It had a depression in it that we used to get every springtime. So we were able to fix the drainage system out there with the extra money. And the airport is not costing the town money. We are now making money at the average of $11,000 a year. I have a couple of ideas that we can expand that airport in a very viable business type manner, and there's some improvements that can be made out there. And there's a piece of property across the street that we own at the airport that I'd like to discuss with the board after Fred talks about the hangars.
Okay. On the subject of the hangar, that one hangar that was created because of the two warrant articles we passed in '98 and '99, which gave the select board the power to lease for a long-term basis footprints for the construction of hangars for aviation purposes. That also gave the select board the power to create an airport development committee, of which I'm here sitting tonight as its chair. That one hangar in 8 years has produced about $30,000 in positive cash flow to the town, about $5,000 in lease payments, and $24,000 in property tax improvements on the vertical construction. So that hangar did everything we said it was going to do, and I'm here to tell you tonight that I'm in discussion with another individual, very well qualified, who would like to build at least the Grady-size hangar. And he's also proposing to put in as his expense a fuel facility. Plymouth has no fuel facility at its airport location, so pilots either have to hand carry fuel or they have to fly to a fuel station, usually Laconia, sometimes with not as much fuel as they would like. So we would like to have fuel available there, and I've made some preliminary discussions with the fire chief, and he's given me his views on what needs to be done before they could act on it. But both of those things would be very positive acts towards making that airport even more viable. I would also like to explore the possibility of by a land swap. We do own more than 2/3 of the land owned by the airport is on the north side of Quincy Road. And it's virtually useless to the airport at this point in time. We would like to, at some point in time, perhaps expand the runway a small amount, if for no other reason, to get the road off the runway that we had to put in to get at the new hangar. So I would like to have the permission to enter into discussion with the Fredericks, which are the abutter directly east of us. They own 31 acres there, to see if they would be interested in exchanging some of it for a comparable piece of land that we own across the street. It would make really good sense for us to try to ensure that we had that option. We could expand 300 feet without touching the ESZ. To go any further than that, we would have to work a mitigation
strategy to go any further than the 300 feet runway extension. With the land we have at the airport, we could possibly do an on-site mitigation, so it's within the realm of the possible. So that's, basically my report is we're seeing increased activity there. Our airport manager, Colin McIver, is doing a really good job. We would like to make some improvements to the so-called terminal building. We have a sign up there, don't drink the water, and it really should say, don't try to flush the toilet either. So Paul and I are in discussion as to how we might perhaps use some of these funds to do at least that. This lease person that I'm talking to, this hangar, he has not ruled out the possibility of becoming an FBO. And to you, if you're not an aviation guy, that means fixed base operator. That's something we haven't had at Plymouth, probably in my memory. It means someone who conducts a business at the airport of selling fuel, coffee, maybe a hamburger, gives flight instructions, and maintains the public toilets. So he would like to see if whether we could, in our negotiations with him about the hangar, perhaps integrate his hangar with the existing terminal building. It's very preliminary. It would be a very positive move if we could do it. There are setbacks issues. There are slope issues that we have to deal with on FAA rules. But the bottom line is things are alive and well at the airport. The one last item is that the current lease that we have that Mr. Grady signed is a 3-page lease. And we've done very well on it. The lease that I had to present the last 2 applicants has grown to 12 pages. It has terms in there that any rational person would never sign, and they didn't. And I've asked Paul to perhaps bring in our town attorney, which he's agreed to do, and we will look at what we could do to make the lease more user-friendly, to empower the leasing of plats as the voters wanted us to do, rather than restrict it, which the current lease clearly does. So that's my report, and we're ready to come back to you when we've got something to talk about tangible.
How did the lease get to its present condition? A dozen pages of...
It got out of my control.
We got another...
I didn't have an input into it, Charlie. It got done by a previous town administrator.
It was expanded upon.
It was expanded upon, and the memo that transmitted it to me tells all. It says, I hope it doesn't scare Al off. Well, it did scare Al off, and it also scared off the second guy. So it was, they knew going on that it was for example, snow shoveling around the building. We're closed in the wintertime.
Okay. But the leasee was obligated to shovel snow.
Yeah, it was one of those terms that, you say, what's going on here? It didn't make sense to do that. Yeah. Another thing is that the lease had in its language that the airport was closing at a date certain, which is not the case at all. We have no plan to close that airport. So it was a big surprise. Paul is aware of it. We're going to take a look. He's asked me to come in with my idea of what a lease, which will be the Grady lease, with whatever improvements we can make without making it a hostile lease.
Now, you talked about on-site mitigation. What's that, for wetlands, or?
Yeah, that would be, the ESZ cuts through the abutting property, which is the Frederick property. We own substantial land towards the river that is currently rented to the Perkinses, and they grow corn on it. If we acquired some or all of the Frederick land, we could dig a hole to replace whatever dirt we put in. It's similar to what the state did when they did exit 25 and dug the hole out of Cody's Field by the covered bridge. That was a good example of how they mitigated the problem. They filled in down on 93, dug a hole over by the covered bridge. It's pretty early for us to be thinking in those terms. We could expand the airport 350 feet without touching the ESZ. There would be some, I think Some of it may be in the flood area, but again, we could mitigate on site. We can dig the hole on our land. We wouldn't have to go off site.
You mentioned the airport fund. So revenues from there have been rolling over year after year?
I was going to bring that up. We have to actually go back and look at our warrant articles. Now that we're accumulating money, it was never worried about in the past on how we were accumulating it and how we were going to spend it, because it just wasn't happening. Now that it's happening, I've gotten the Department of Revenue involved, because believe it or not, our first warrant article on forming and giving permission to an airport committee to be able to collect funds for the airport was done in 1946 after World War II. I started at 1992 looking for the warrant article, and it wasn't until 46. There's a little bit of mentioning in the 50s on entertaining, trying to bring in more revenue at that airport again, but nothing was really voted on. So we have to look at the 1946 warrant article, send it to the Department of Revenue, and see if it still pertains to today's standards and the way money flows through trust funds and stuff like that. Plus, we're getting to the point where not only is the airport able to sustain itself, it can be a profitable business for the town to go back towards the general fund or the unreserved fund balance. And that's the goal, to gain more revenue for the unreserved fund balance.
So currently, it's not a trust fund situation, it's just...
It is. It's an airport fund that we... See, not only are we having trouble touching it now, and we didn't expect it to get up this high that quickly, some people didn't, but it's even questionable on how the airport itself can touch the money now that we've raised it. We did have permission to put it in the fund. It's not that clear in how to get the money out of the fund, so that's what the Department of Revenue will help us do now. So that not only can we use it, but any additional balance, depending on what the legislative body or the government party decides, can go back towards the general fund. Okay. Because there's quite a bit of potential out there.
Yeah, some of the funds, depending on their source, are restricted by RSA, that they must be used at the... So Paul's going to sort out what the flow of those funds is and what are restricted and what aren't.
Now, the fuel depot, if you put the fuel depot in and then have somebody there...
Well, this one, the fuel depot would be self-serve, and it's all aviation fuel, which costs at this time around $3.70 a gallon, and it would be, the way we're thinking now, it would probably be on the other side of the runway, accessible only by aircraft, and it would be a card and a passcode to get the fuel. And it's pretty standard on small airports, self-serve fuel. Similar to the Yetton fuel depot up on 3A.
Do tanks go under the ground with that, or how do they?
No, the chief tells me that tanks above the ground really are preferred because of water table issues. Yeah. And they make a double-walled up above-ground tank that will give us all the security one could ask for.
Okay. So
there's a standard tank that airports use. It would either be 3,000 or 5,000 gallons, and the reason the sizing is there's an economy of scale taking a delivery from a delivery truck as to what size. That'll be in the detail that the leasee will bring in as to what their engineering plan is for fuel. So right now we're thinking above ground because that appears to be what is preferred, but I won't preclude an in-ground. If it's in-ground, it'll meet all in-ground standards, double wall, fiberglass, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Helicopters, any long-term plans for helicopters, that kind of thing?
I can get into that.
Yeah, we'll let Paul handle that.
Now we're getting back into the emergency management world and the Homeland Security grants that are available out there, one of which includes helicopters. We now maintain a helicopter pad year-round. In the wintertime, Highway Department goes out there, and the person that plows out the Grady's hangar plows out an area that we can use a helicopter pad. The first time that we did that was in 2007. We ended up using that helicopter pad to rescue a couple of students that were lost for a few days on one of the mountains up north. The National Guard worked out of our airport. The biggest problem that they had was not being able to have fuel on site, and they had to truck in fuel. And along with the Homeland Security grants, Ray Burton's been doing a great job in helping us get the money back that we spend each year on the on the airport, we get reimbursed from the state.
That would make sense if we're going to be a regional hub for emergency management.
Right, and this is what's happening. We're considered in the emergency management plan, not only in Plymouth, but in the regional, as a state now, not what we were talking about earlier in the medical field. We're in the Yankee fly zone. The military has us listed as an emergency landing zone. They'll bring in Chinooks from New York in the event that Plymouth was to need mutual aid from the federal government. The National Guards can now use the airport. But some of the steps that we've taken over the last 3 years have now allowed us to finally be eligible for Homeland Security grants and quite a bit of money to go out to the airport and expand it and make it more viable. We've also put together a grid of pilots. I believe it's around 20 through Colin MacGyver. They call them flying angels right now. If somebody was to need an emergency flight to somewhere, even if we have to piggyback it with some, we have a range of about 400 miles for the type planes that we have out there. But to fly somebody, I'm sure you've heard it all the time, we're at no charge to get somebody to a place that they have to get to for medical emergency. So that's now available to us. It's part of our emergency plan to have these 20 pilots on standby. This coming winter, we'll have 2 planes that are capable of landing in the snow on the runway. They will be skis. And for security reasons, I'm not going to get into what 2 planes those planes would be and how we would accomplish that. But there is a plan for that now.
So 400 miles is Canada, right? So that make it
It'll get
Gould?
you to, we can make it to New York.
So we'll call it Gould International Airport, is that?
Lovely. To answer your fuel question, if there was an economy of scale, in other words, would anybody use the jet fuel, which the helicopter, then this person would be more than willing to sell it to them. They would put a second tank in. So to answer your question, we could fuel helicopters there if there was a need for it. So.
What kind of a time frame are you looking at to get started with the hangar? And
Well, this guy's pretty serious. He just bought his second small airplane. He's now flying in and parking an airplane on the grass up there. He's leasing one of our ties down. So he'd like to get going on it. And he's known to us. He's the owner of Plymouth Commerce Park. It's Mr. Joe Memphy. He's got an aviation background. He owns Hopedale Airport down in Massachusetts. Very experienced aviation guy. He's the real thing. We're just in the very early stages of getting to know you, Joe. And he's collecting information. I met with him earlier this week, last week, and gave him copies of the lease that we currently are offering, which he's looking at. And I don't know how he's going to react to it. And he got back to me on the fuel. So to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, this is something that could come together fairly quickly. Could we do it this year? Well, we're losing the construction season, for one thing. Probably not. It would undoubtedly be the same style building that Mr. Grady did, Alaskan slab and a steel building. So it would be another real plus to the airport if we could land this guy.
And the other last thing that we have on the airport is I'm going to be coming before the board in the future as we do more research on it. A portion of the land that Fred's alluded to and doing a swap with is part of 74 acres that we own across from the airport. I've brought it up to several boards in the past on what are we going to do with the 74 acres. They are flat. A portion of it is wetland. We believe there's an aquifer under there, but we have a good portion of land out there that if we can't find another use for it, as past boards have indicated, then we should start entertaining the fact of doing something with it or trading for something, because we're running out of time. If we're going to try talking about trading 20 years from now, I don't think there's going to be anything left to trade for. But right now, while there's still parcels of land in this town that we might be able to use rather than being in that remote area, per se, moving the highway department off the river and just having that piece of land reserved for 10 years, 15 years from now, now's the time that we have to start considering trading for somebody, even if it's less acreage, but more usable, friendly for the town to be able to use it for one of its departments.
You shut down, what, 3 months, 4 months of the year? What? You say it's over 3?
Yeah, we don't plow. That's why you mentioned the ski plants. It's a sunrise to sunset operation 6 months a year. So, and it's considered the best grass strip in New England. So it's a strip that people love to come to, very pretty. If we had any kind of facility there, it would increase that traffic.
How do you spot the thing? I mean,
Pardon?
how do you find it if you're flying? I mean,
If you're in
I've been
aviation,
in these in
you
Kansas, and you
get
have
your-
a grain elevator, and that's what you're looking for.
Killer salvage.
It's called
Yeah.
GPS, Charlie.
If you don't have that,
If you don't have that, you should be able to airplane.
we actually look for the covered bridge, in all honesty, and line yourself
Yeah,
up with
there's got to
that.
be something.
And you should hit the airport. give or take
That electronics
20
stuff is
feet.
nuts.
I'll look forward to meeting you folks as we
Thank
move
you.
along.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Fred, and I'd just like to say personally that I appreciate that you're trying to run it like a business and that you've actually turned it around, so
Great.
thank you.
Yeah, Paul is someone that understands, number one, aviation, and number two, he was a former member of the airport committee, so he has that kind of emotional involvement, so it's been very helpful helping him. Thank you.
Very good, thanks.
Okay, excellent. Trevor Taylor. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Seen you for about a week.
Would you prefer I come sit up here?
Yes, please. You're from Congressman Hode's office.
I am.
Going to give us a federal update.
Yes, I know that the New Hampshire Department of Transportation came and gave a presentation here in Plymouth, and unfortunately we weren't able to make it to that, but I want to update you on federal projects with the Highway Transportation Fund as well as some other instances. As you probably heard from New Hampshire DOT, the Highway Trust Fund is a little uncertain at this point in time. The congressman has been consistently voting to put money into that trust fund. So hopefully the congressman is committed to putting forth a steady revenue source at some point rather than having to do these temporary transfers of funds that continually make it uncertain as to whether or not it will actually be funded from year to year. And so that's been one of his priorities. And another instance with the safety loo, the transportation resurfacing funds. I know you probably also heard that there's a chance that the funding would expire on the 30th of this month. However, the House just voted last month to extend that to December 31st. Because as you know, with healthcare and the energy debate that's going to be happening in the coming months, they haven't been able to direct as much specific attention to the transportation yet. But the congressman voted to extend the deadline from the 30th to December 31st to give a greater amount of time for the Transportation Committee to focus on reauthorizing the safety loop. So as far as the transportation goes, the congressman is in support of reauthorizing safety loop for the additional, I think it's, I feel like the authorization is for another 18 months on this, or no, this is a 6-year extension. So the congressman is supporting that extension as well as the Highway Trust Fund as well. So I didn't know if you had any other questions in regards to the highway or New Hampshire DOT that you'd like to follow up on that I might be able to answer.
Valerie and I were at that meeting, and we were just concerned about the 10-year plans. So
Right.
we'd slidden off the
Yeah.
priority list for, well, go ahead. Did you?
Well,
Give the history.
yeah.
Trevor, we were on the 10-year plan to have Route 3, Main Street to the Ashland line redone and not just resurfaced, but actually be reclaimed. And especially the part from the crosswalk that you see out here in front of the town hall. They did do it north, where they go down about 3 feet and take the concrete slabs out. That was supposed to happen about 3 years from now. It's no longer part of the 10-year plan. It's no longer part of any plan right now. And we were supposed to be having that done 3 years from now. And from the crosswalk to Rite Aid, the main concern, it's 3/4 of a mile. The plan had called for a 3-mile reclaiming, which would have taken us to the Bridgewater Ashland line. But we're more concerned about the 3/4 of a mile that we have right here in downtown Village, from here to Rite Aid, because that's where all our infrastructure is with our sewer, our water, and we need to know about this ahead of time, number one, so that we can start making our plans. The water company can start making their plans and their projections of how to handle the under-the-surface infrastructure between sewer and water lines and some conduit. We'd like to redo our sidewalks. We can't do our sidewalks until this plan comes into place because it's going to be some underground wiring to connect the new light post in the future. And we'd like to do it all at one time so that we're not digging it up.
So the
We found
procedural
out
problem was that the town handed over our priority list to our regional North Country Council, who then reprioritized, who then handed over to the state, who reprioritized, so it's...
Somewhere it got filtered out,
Yeah.
out of the plan. And we need to get it, it's important to the town that we get it back on the plan.
Going from town to regional to state, you just sort of realized firsthand we
We just found out last week it got dropped somewhere along the line.
And you found that out from New Hampshire DOT?
Yes.
Yeah. I can look into that and get back on that special projects person.
And the other question that I had, as far as broadband goes,
Yes.
have you heard anything about why there's a delay?
I know that there is, in the American Recovery Act, there were $6 billion funds for rural broadband, $6 billion for it. I know in regards to a lot of the Recovery Act funds are being filtered through the state, so it goes through people who apply for it. And I know Fairpoint was said to be making application to access those funds to explore putting broadband in. I'm not sure with their current state what the status of that is. I know I was just talking with Senator Reynolds the other day about this, and she's also concerned in regards to the fact that Fairpoint is they're the ones that have the capability to do that infrastructure development. So in regards to where it's at as far as the state applying for money for the rural development, broadband, I'm not exactly certain.
And is there any chance that you have somebody on the inside that could check into our fire station grant?
I can. I know I was talking about this, I believe, a little bit before, as far as where are you in the process of fire department grant? Because I have been talking about this with Lisa Levine.
We're just in the process of waiting to see if it was approved.
Okay. In talking with Lisa a little while ago, I believe there was a list of ones who were approved, and I can check on that for you. I can tell you that there was a very limited group. New Hampshire was lucky because I think we got, I was listening, we got 2 or 3. And some states got none, especially in the Northeast.
Is it safe to say we would have heard by now? If we
I would have thought so.
Because we need to continue forward,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that we're heavily relying on what direction we were going.
Yeah.
So it's pretty safe to say that we're not going to...
I would say so. I can double check on that, but I do know that the Northeast as a whole, I think Vermont got 1. I think Maine got on the order of 1 or 2 as well. So they were very sparsely given
It's
out.
only 80 out of 8,000, so
Yeah.
Is that 80 out of 8,000, right?
1% chance.
No. Unfortunately.
That's all I have.
And I didn't know if this might also be something of use in the transportation. I know that the congressman has been urging Transportation Secretary LaHood to promote that within the Safety Lou reauthorization, that language be included to allow local transit agencies to use federal funds not only to purchase new equipment, but to utilize it on their current capital. And I don't know if that would be something that would be of interest to Plymouth either.
Yeah, I think so, because Miriam Bader was doing so much work with the alternative pathways, and there was that difficulty of monies going towards paving or car road issues versus, as opposed to some of the sidewalk and alternative pathways for bikes and whatnot. So that'd be great, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just so you could actually work with what you have rather than consistently have to add on and add on. And also, I know, being a PSU grad myself, that one of the big things that's going through right now in regards to college is the student loan restructuring that the congressman supports. And so if that goes through, there are significant advantages to students that are going to be happening as far as lower interest rates, less erratic behavior with interest rates with student loans, as well as expanding of Perkins loans, which are going to be a huge help to students. And that passed the House, and now it's on to the Senate, along with seemingly all the other legislation that's going to the Senate, that's going through the House. So that's one of the big things that's going through that are going to affect the students around here.
Okay, anyone?
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Chair. I'll see you again.
Yeah.
Land use permits are available for review in the lobby of the Select Board's office. Don't sign those anymore. I don't have any comments.
Signs. Amphitheater.
We have no purchase orders to approve.
You want to talk about the amphitheater signs, Charlie?
Charlie.
The amphitheater signs.
Oh, all right, yeah. We have, the Rotary has, where they constructed the amphitheater on the river, and they wish to put up something that would indicate they were behind it. This is the sign that would go under the eaves of the covered walkway, which was also put up by Rotary. Under that, they want to put a sign that the Rotary Amphitheater, Riverside Park. Our preference is, right now what we'd like to do is, it's not Riverside anyway, what's it called, River Edge?
Riverfront.
Riverfront. And we would like to have the students and people in town comment on this sign. The Rotary sign, I think, will be put in place either way, but this sign, I think we'd like to get someone to give us some suggestions for naming the park, and we could have this sign changed. Do we call it the Rotary Amphitheater, or do we call it the Plymouth Amphitheater, or do we call it anything we'd like? I don't know how we're going to mobilize this, but we're going to try to get some student activity, both university and the local kids' high school, to come up with some names for suggested names.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we hand this over to the high school, so the business association or some marketing group of kids can come up with a naming strategy or branding for
Call
the
a branding contest.
how's that? Some kind of branding campaign. That's it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to turn this over to the students in town, high school, to come up with a branding or a naming recommendations or suggestions for the Rotary Amphitheater. And it would be with the Rotary symbol, which we have no problem with, but this would like to see some suggestions. So, Mr. Freitas, can you muster the troops?
Yes, I will.
We have
You have to
a
vote.
motion. It's been made and seconded. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Take care of this.
And the second sign, the Rotary sign,
That's been approved. Rotary is,
yeah, you still have
do
to
we
take
have to approve it?
Yes.
All right. I'd like to, I'll move that we approve the Rotary sign for the amphitheater covered walkway, identifying the Rotary as the source of the amphitheater. And second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that this sign be approved for use in the amphitheater walkway Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, this is approved. So I'll take it down to Wednesday. Yes,
Possible to make a comment from the audience?
yes.
I'd just like to remind the board that the land came from the Water and Sewer District. To acknowledgements down the line.
I'd still like to get the Water and Sewer District's response to my request for a unmetered water source down there.
It is a quid pro quo here.
That's what I suggested, I think, when I made the...
I think this is great for the high school marketing branding campaign. We can involve all that information. That's...
They
The
can,
land
yeah,
can-
we
to
can
sort of
make them
joint effort of
aware of the
water.
fact that the land was donated by the water district. When did that land get turned over to us? 99? Or sooner?
The entire site seems to be the work of a great number of groups that, should probably, if you're talking about land from water, if you're talking about the solar group that's doing the panels, rotary structure. So hopefully we can just impart to that group to do their research and brand accordingly.
Has the water district responded to my request, or?
Haven't had a meeting since. That's tomorrow night.
Yeah, I wasn't at the last one, so but we do need an unmetered water source. I'd like to, as I said at the meeting, I think the water district should be given credit for what they contributed, but I'm still trying to hold this over your head, if I might. See if we can get a...
Did we, okay, did the board make a vote on this,
We voted on the rotary sign, no.
on the water, on this water issue?
No, I think at this point, we let the...
This isn't a board communication, though, about the meter, right?
No.
This is not a board.
No, the water district has, I've asked them, and they haven't responded yet.
You asked them as a citizen, not as a,
It was as a
I asked
citizen.
them as
we-
a
we
selectman's
have to wait
rep to the district.
okay.
We have to wait for a comment from Mr. Berman to come back from the water, so that you can act on it.
Say it again, we have to wait for a comment.
To come back
Got
from
it.
Mr. Berman for us to comment.
Once we get an answer.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
you asked once and we did reply.
Yes.
And you
And
come
then I
back.
asked again.
Right. Did the board respond to that, for our first reply?
It wasn't,
Yes.
Or did you?
Well, we said we weren't interested. We don't have the funding to pay $2,000 for a metered water source.
Of course, for this fiscal year, we're in the same circumstance, but it's not in the budget. But, so that's...
Well, we're worse off this fiscal year than we were last because of the $400,000 reduction in state aid.
Right, understood. So I'm just saying it's not in our budget, so it's something we could act on immediately without going to the ratepayers anyway.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, could I have the town administrator just explain what has been brought before the board and what has not? What's, just so the board can,
just Mr. Berman's findings as a citizen, but you did not take a vote on what to do. Mr. Berman's response was that he would once again go back to the water company and speak to individual members to see the individual feelings.
I brought it up at the last meeting I was at, and I haven't had a response yet, primarily because I haven't been to the last meeting, and the next one is next Tuesday.
so you want to put together something to bring before the board and,
Yeah.
okay.
And if, and it would include the acknowledgement of the water district's contribution to this entire project.
Chairman Berman had requested more time to look into it further before asking this board to make any action either way on the matter.
Thanks.
All right. Is it? New purchase orders. We have,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
any purchase orders there regarding asphalt has come before this board in the form of picking a contract low bid user at $78 a ton. With that said, we mentioned that night that it would then come in individual purchase orders to fulfill that amount.
Yeah, we have
And those
purchase-
first two are your purchase orders.
we have 2 POs here. Well, actually 3. Am I correct?
It does not apply to the third one, it applies to only the first two. You can vote on the first two in one.
Here's the highway. Give us a little background information. Peter? I've got some questions on the... How are you?
Peter.
We have one purchase order that's $41,707.98. It's related to specific projects.
That project was what we received our bid on from GM.
Okay. One's for Merrill Street and one's for
Drive, Valley View.
View. And then 2 tons of handwork, whatever that means. I guess that's curbing and,
That means putting it in place with a wheelbarrow.
okay. But there was a purchase order for 28 tons of asphalt in place. Okay, for 9,900.
That's that's just more information.
Is that, the 28 tons, is that for Merrill Street and,
It is not. That is for additional work that I'd like to ask the board to do on Winter Street. That was not part of our original plan to pave, but because we finished with a lower amount of tonnage and we had some surplus money, after reviewing Winter Street, the lower half, I felt that asphalt would suit that location.
okay, so this one's for a Winter Street project.
That's correct.
Okay.
It still falls underneath the original contract, $78 per ton.
All right. So we have to vote on the, now what about the third one, the salt? That's just the purchase.
2 loads of winter salt.
Okay.
That's the area of Winter Street down near the water? Or,
Winter Street is off of
right, Russell,
Wentworth.
Barrel, yeah.
It's from
So
Fox
moving-
Park to the road that intersects with Texas.
First, is that the end you're concerned about? Yeah.
It's extremely rough.
Right, so,
Yeah.
That's the one that's got there's a rut in that, I guess it's like a pipeline that had been put in and sort of,
Water and Sewer had done a project there, and when they resurfaced over that project only. And the remainder of the road that wasn't resurfaced is in pretty poor shape. So what I wanted to do is complete the project.
yeah, if you come down Texas Hill,
Correct.
or Warren Street or whatever, and you make a turn into Russell, you right at the bottom, you hit a rut that just about takes your axles off, if you're going over 5 miles an hour. So is that part of the,
It was not part of that. That was something we were going to pave in-house.
okay,
This was done with a contractor. We still have some paving that we're going to do by hand in certain locations around town, and I think I discussed it earlier, so I don't need.
all right, so we have to approve these?
Right, Peter had come before me because he did have that leftover amount within his contract. But I asked him, because there was a new road being added, that he put it as a separate purchase
Winter
order.
Street.
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve all 3 of these in one. Is that acceptable? Paul? Or should I do them one at a time? Okay.
No, you can, it's one department, it's,
All right, so,
So
you know,
moved.
so moved to,
All
okay.
3,
So we're a second?
second?
Okay, we have a motion to approve 3 purchase orders, one for $41,707.98 for 2 projects, including handwork, one for $9,984 for 28 tons of asphalt, which is for the Winter Street program, and one for $3,988.18 for 33.13 and 33.64 tons of salt, $59.73 a ton. Is there any comment?
Mr. Chairman, we will make note on that motion. That will expire the total bid amount that was agreed upon by this board.
By when?
By this fall?
That will finish the quantity that was agreed upon by this board. So future asphalting on future roads will require another bid,
Okay.
unless it's done in-house by highway.
Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so the 3 POs are approved. We haven't signed these, have we? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. All right. Committee reports. Mr. Chief Coxon, can you come up, please? Report on the Public Safety Complex Committee and a request for a public hearing.
Hey, man.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
As everybody knows, this has been an ongoing process for about 15 years.
Right.
And this committee had looked at several options, and what we're finding out is as time goes on, like you've already talked about, land is few and far between. And the land that is out there, they want a large sum of money for it. So the thought of taking any properties by eminent domain was off the table because it's a very lengthy and not a nice thing to do, especially when the town owns some property that we could potentially build on. So at our last meeting, the committee took a vote and voted on 3 prospects that we had. One we refer to as the PD site, that's where the current police station is. There's 2 lots there that the town owns. There's some open land that is south of the PD. There's the site where the PD actually is. And then we actually looked at some land that was not on the market, but we asked if the owner would entertain sale of that property. And that was in the floodplain, flood zone area. But the asking price for 1.5 acres of land we thought was not palatable to the taxpayers, which was, and this offer was only for the intentions of a fire station, was $380,000 for a potential 1.5 acres. That's quite steep for just 1.5 acres of property, we thought. So when we were looking at the PD site, we had the Bowen Corporation representative come up. Then he took a look at the site. We had the matrix that was done, the topo survey, that I believe Terry French did. And the report came back on that, that if we were doing, I took the map out here, if we were to build on the lot that does not have anything, it's just basically open. Now, Charlie,
One south of the
the
police
one
station.
south of the current police station. Well, the big one like that. But to put in, we need 1.5 acres of the fire station, besides it and the parking that we would need. What the projected cost of excavating that site was at a minimum of $700,000. So bank on $1 million in excavation fees, which we didn't think that was a very nice thing to do. We then asked the Bowen Corporation. We said, okay, let's go with Plan B. The police station, the square footage there, they pretty much have enough space. They just have a building that is like us coming down around their ears. What would it cost to potentially take this piece where they're at, pretend that it's empty, put the old building in a trash can? What would it cost to do the excavation work? The current PD is for fire station. That price estimated came in at $230,000, which was a lot better than the $700,000. So then the committee, looking at it, saying the best thing to do, we know we have 2 structures, very important structures in the town, that we need to do something with it. And essentially we could build a fire station, but we're spending $1 million more than we have to. So the committee's looking at moving the police station up in a southerly direction, which they could go in here, and the excavation cost would be a lot less than $700,000 because their building would fit right where it is, and that building can be elevated, as where the fire station would have to be excavated, all the ledge blasted down to road grade, so that you didn't have fire trucks leaving and sliding out. So we looked at it as a savings. We're kind of, everybody's looking for a public safety complex. We changed gears, but now to save the taxpayers some money, it looks like that right now with the land that we have, be able to use it to the best of the town's ability is to go ahead and would like to start having public hearings on the concept that we're going to hold off on the fire station for another year, get the police station out because it doesn't make any sense to move them because of the dispatch center. It's a huge cost. So move them out, put them up there, and then we'd have enough space and it wouldn't cost that much to excavate and have a foundation ready to go. When we were doing this, the Deputy Chief Morrison applied for that grant that was spoke about earlier. We had since got word that other departments had gotten follow-up questions, which is not a good sign for us. So we had to move forward with this project. So the $2 million grant that we were looking for is, for the most part, we think, out of the question. So what I'm asking for the board's permission is whether or not we can move forward with this concept.
So the plan is to build a police station.
Yep.
Tear down the one we have.
Mm-hmm.
What is the excavation cost for the police station? Did they give you an estimate of that? It was.
I did.
I think it was a couple $100,000 to take the station down, and
$230,000 when I have the document here would be to remove, excavate, retaining walls, and be ready to go.
okay. So we're 230 versus 750, 800,000 on the other lot.
Right.
For
So-
the best use of that land up there, for the best use of the land that we have up there, is to do the police station first,
Yeah.
fire station second.
Yeah.
Because
So-
when Piper did the test pits, in behind the police station is nothing but sugar sand. The other lot is nothing but ledge.
And they just don't need the same footprint going back that you do.
No,
The current station does have, yeah, so it makes a lot more sense.
The Bowen Corporation took a look at our space needs with the garage and what, we got a 40-person apartment with parking. You're looking at a minimum of an acre, and that would be squishing it. And when Deputy Chief and I went down and met with the Bowen Corporation, and he had several pilots trying to place it, but the grade goes up so quick. There's a lot of excavating cost associated with building here. The best thing is, right where you see this here, that fits right in nicely and have enough space for parking as opposed to spending the money and then being cramped. Here again, it's not planning for the future.
And where on this are they talking about locating the police department?
Right up here, it kind of flattens out. And I mean, it's somewhat flat. There's still going to be a...
That was where the fire station was going to go.
So it was the same location, but forward?
Yeah, just down this would be towards the main street.
Yep.
South.
Is it a smaller police station or same footprint as they have now? What's the...
No, I let Chief Campanino speak on that.
Yeah.
It just
So-
doesn't have to go as far further back,
Yeah,
which is where the money's...
got it, so they could go 2 floors if they needed to.
Whereas in here's less, they'll still have to blast in here, make that footprint.
So the proposal to the town at town meeting will be to tear down rebuild or build a new police station on the lot where the fire station was going to go, and tear down the old police station and get it ready for
While they're there,
fire.
the belief is that while they're there, you can get what little bit of retaining walls would have to be done while they're right there. At cheap cost, they may be able to even use some of the ledge that they blast to use for our retaining walls, as opposed to them removing it, and then we have another company come in and do some more work, and then they bring in some retaining wall material, rocks.
But the bond issue, or whatever we go for at town meeting, would be a police station.
The basic is a police station, yes.
And then next year, we got to go back and start over again with the fire department.
Well, this has been going on
Yeah.
for a lot of the work is already done.
And if you think of it as a public safety complex, you're sort of spending less over time, less smaller chunks.
Well, yeah, it's not a complex in the sense that
Right,
the
it's a
old
site,
one was,
in the
but
sense of
it's
a site, a public
basically,
safety site.
Right.
It's a municipal facility with both departments on it.
And the thing with this is if we look towards the future, if you have to expand, one of the issues that you're finding with a building that's right together, as the two departments grow, they start going for the same real estate under the roof, as opposed to being able now to build off.
Well, the major advantage of this is, for either station, is that we own the property.
Right.
And it's the only piece of property large enough to accommodate both buildings, but unfortunately, the police department is where the fire department's going to have to go if we use this thing without spending well, you're looking at, what, $800,000, $1 million?
I'd say that's a low ball estimate, so I would bank on at least $1 million, because you don't know what you're going to get into. I mean, those are estimates.
Now, what's the estimate for, have we gotten any estimates for the police department site work on the fire department, on the property that you're going to put the fire department on?
I haven't received any.
Okay.
Because that would, square footage, that requires a lot of.
We're going to have to present this to the public as we went for a fire station and came up with a police station. But other than that,
Well, looking at the situation at hand, we had to kind of switch gears to see what was the best. I'd love to say that we're going for a fire station. I mean, I've been 20 years in that building, but the best thing for the town that we've found is that changing gears like this.
Yeah, and energy-wise, we're actually losing money. So the police station, as it stands now, we're losing money through the roof. So we're
it's not exactly the most energy-efficient building.
Everything's going to cost.
So
at least we're stopping the utility bleed in the short term. And
We'll say that this was this decision to vote with the people that were there. Paul, unfortunately, couldn't make it. That meeting, I believe, Butch. Kelly.
Yes, because of your change of direction, Mr. Chairman, on the committee, you need to have an October 13th public hearing. That's the earliest that we could have a public hearing to get our 14 days in.
Is that?
It's on a Tuesday.
So that's our next board meeting.
Right.
13th, right?
Because I foresee you needing to have many public hearings, especially with the change.
Yeah, I think we're going to need at
And at
least
that
two,
first
maybe
hearing,
more.
the objective of that first hearing is to explain the changes and the direction that the committee had to go in, come to this conclusion.
So should we
You need to
set the date right now for the public
vote to set a
hearing?
date for a public hearing.
All right.
I would say 6:30 on October 13th.
Do I have a motion to that effect, that we have a public hearing on this, the change of
Direction by the
direction
committee.
by the committee to build a police department and prepare the site where the police department is for the new fire department?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Again, I'll repeat, the purpose of the public hearing is to explain and get comments on the change from construction of a fire department building to building a new police department on the site that the fire department was originally intended to go, and prepare the site where the police department currently is for a new fire department, which would be, we're talking another year at least.
That night, after the meeting expires and you come out of that meeting, if it's still the intent of the legislative body for you to go ahead and change direction,
And we'd have
Then-
another hearing on the details.
then the committee would start meeting and the police department would start investigating what the cost would be and what their needs would be.
We probably have to
put
vote a
together.
new chairman. The fire department is,
We'll get through the
we can
October
get to
13th
that.
public
The
hearing.
committee will do that. We can, all right, those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? So we will have a public hearing at 6:30 on the October 13 to discuss the change in direction. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
All right. I trust everyone is completely confused by that one.
No, just you.
Other business. Mr. Gould. Yeah, we've already done Mr. Gould, okay. Mr. McGreary on the Pleasant Street concerns. Mr. McGreary, how are you?
My name is Michelle Prine. I'm Thomas McGreary's wife.
All right, would you like to come up? Have a seat.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
How are you tonight? Your name is?
Michelle Prine. My husband is Thomas McGreary.
Okay.
So I submitted a couple of letters
Yeah.
To the town and to the police department.
It's on the Pleasant Street.
Do you want me to summarize that? Or?
Yes. Yeah, please.
Okay, so basically, we identified 3 kind of concerns or issues we had for living on Pleasant Street. We're relatively new residents to the street. We've been there for about 3 years now. And the first is just disturbance from partiers or people walking to and from parties. The second is the amount of traffic and speeding on Pleasant Street and ignoring the stop sign at Langdon and Pleasant. And then the third is the condition of the road. So I talked with someone at Town Hall, and they recommended I write 2 separate letters, one to the Highway Department, one to the Police Department. So I've done that, and so and then I collected signatures from my neighbors and just had a lot of very nice conversations. So since that happened, I've had a conversation with the Chief of Police, the Plymouth Police, Steve Temporino, and that was very informative, and I was encouraged to attend the Campus Community Council meeting. So I've learned a lot about Plymouth State's policy and the town of Plymouth's policy for dealing with students or people that are partying, not to single out students on the streets or loud houses or whatever, and problem houses and all that. So I do feel that the town of Plymouth and the Plymouth State University is doing pretty much everything they can to be responsive. And talking with the chief, it sounds like they've increased the patrol units on our street, and foot patrol is really great. So I feel like we're doing what we can on that. And since the time a problem house was identified, and it is noticeably quieter on the street, however, the nuisance that remains, which is really difficult, as the chief pointed out at the Campus Community Council meeting, to capture, if you will, are these random disturbances that happen that are pretty frequent. And pretty much we can predict every Thursday and then maybe Saturday or Sunday we're going to have a random late night disturbance, and there might be more than one. Like, so for example, this past Thursday, there was yelling at 1:30 that woke me up out of sound sleep, and then at 4:30 a truck, I think it was at the house up the street, but who knows, right? Revved its engine and woke myself and my 1-year-old son up, and we had our windows closed. So it's disturbances like that that are particularly frustrating. And I'm looking for suggestions from the neighborhood or whatever as to how we can maybe as neighbors or people in the community raise awareness of the people that are out late at night, that maybe they should treat the streets like a library, kind of, because after hours, the houses are really close to the street and their voices echo right up through the window, and it wakes us up out of the sound sleep. And if it was just spring fling weekend or when they come back or around the holidays when they leave, I would be fine with that. But since, a couple more houses have gone towards student houses, the frequency of students walking up and down the street. So I don't know, ideas I got from my neighbors were maybe organizing because bottles in the yard is something that's a nuisance, or organizing student cleanups on the streets. I don't know. So that's kind of, I'm at a standstill with that. I feel, like I said, that so that's my report for that matter.
Let me ask you where do you live on Pleasant?
I'm pretty much in the middle of Pleasant Street, so there's lower...
Above Langdon or below?
Above, so 28 Pleasant Street.
So you're just past the intersection of Langdon?
Yeah, so about 3 houses up. So, and there's some houses up the street that when we first moved there were quiet and vacant or for sale, And now they've been purchased. And I think one of the hardest, if a house is identified as a problem house, I've heard that one of the hardest things is if it's not a landlord that's in town. Because that was the other thing. At the Campus Community Council meeting, I met many of the landlords in town, and they are very responsive, and I was very impressed by that group of people. But I wonder, so there was an example of a house that's been a problem somewhere else in town, and eviction notices were served to the students. But I wonder if it's a landlord that has children in the house. That was a question that I thought of after the meeting. What is the policy there? I know they get a warning or whatever, but of course the students wouldn't be evicted.
Since we've gotten many calls on this, Mr. Chairman, and
I don't know
had
any
both departments
landlords.
respond as quick as possible,
I don't
I
know
think you
any
need to bring
landlords that live in the houses with kids, but that's...
I think you need to bring the expert to the table. And there's a lot that the chief and the PD have done to try to rectify the situation between then and now, and he would know the proper steps and which direction to go from here, instead of us speculating on what's to be done next.
I can save this conversation for the next Campus Community Council meeting. I just felt that since I had sent the letter to the Select Board that I would let you know where I'm at with my quest in that direction. So I don't know what you guys think.
Chief Temporino, do you have any comments? Would you like to make comments?
Well, I can certainly sympathize with what's going on that street, and we've watched that behavior creep up on Western Pleasant Street for a number of years, and it has a lot to do with the real estate market. Homes are being sold and they're being bought up by families who are renting them out to college students. So it's a part of our community that we've been trying to address more. Some families have moved in, and anytime we have traditional use next to academic use late night, we're going to have a conflict, and we're doing the best we can to address it. This past weekend, we spent a lot of time on foot patrol in the area. We handed out a lot of flyers to the people who live there, describing or explaining our policy with noise complaints and breach of the peace. Over the weekend, we issued a lot of citations in the area as well. So we are doing what we can to try to mitigate as much of it as we can.
Yeah, and I'm convinced of that.
I would also like to say that, first I'd like to welcome you to the community, even though you've been here 2 years.
Yeah.
But one of the steps that we have taken that it seems to us helped is that we have asked the college to keep freshmen and sophomores on campus, which has really helped in that it has cut down on a lot of these problems. On the other thing that it's made these houses more affordable for people like you with your families, you are now moving into those neighborhoods, and that's the tough part, tough part on you. But this is one of our intentions, was to get more families into these neighborhoods again.
Yeah,
so I'm
that's
glad.
what we were told when we moved at the house, and so we didn't. I mean, I knew that Russell Street and Winter Street had the reputation of being, louder streets, but I wasn't expecting the extent of disturbance that we're experiencing. So, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
So, what about Pleasant Street? Why is there so much traffic on that street? Have people watched traffic patterns? I mean, because it's just pretty much continuous, and it's all summer. It's not just associated with students.
It's a quick way out of the hospital. They scoot out the hospital, zoom down Pleasant. That's one, and the hospital's quite busy.
People probably kind of cut off Highland going up to...
Right.
Yeah.
Just circumventing traffic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's just kind of bypassing.
It's kind of, so it's...
But I think the other...
It's hard having 2 young children. I'm a nervous wreck when I take them out in the yard, because with the speed limit signs are great. Who put that in the highway? Yeah, so that's awesome. And then the road moving blinker thingy,
Right.
that's great.
Did you get to monitor that at all? Did you see any of the speeds on that?
Not so much, but
Steve?
But there is a lot of speeding. And
On that sign that we put out there, is there a recorder on that so we know what the high speeds were on that sign?
We have some traffic monitoring devices that we can put out there.
Yeah.
But my sense is that we don't need to measure it to know that people are speeding.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's clear. And we've done some traffic counts on Pleasant Street a few years ago, And you're talking several hundred cars a day in a 24-hour period on that street.
Yeah.
And some of them are traveling as high as 35 and 40 miles per hour.
Absolutely.
And that area is posted at 25 miles per hour. And that's even 25 and 30 is very high, especially if you look how close, how narrow the road is, and that it is equipped with a sidewalk. So there are children walking on the sidewalk. So that's pretty quick.
I don't know, are there any strategies for?
A light on Highland and Broadway, is that at all? Because there is an issue of people circumventing the traffic because it's difficult to get away out of the cross-country lane Cross-country lane is at the development up at the end of Pleasant. I live up at the top of Pleasant, and there's more and more. It's very dense off of Highland, but once you're trying to leave that area to get onto Highland, it's difficult turning either way. So the volume might eventually warrant some kind of light situation for people trying to get out. Just something like that would direct cars away from that sort of parallel straight shot.
Yeah. Is there a weight limit for trucks that would drive on that street? Because that's the other thing we've noticed is that there are quite a few like large trucks that actually might be also taking it as a...
Yeah, there's no weight limit.
There's no weight limit on it, but I have a highway department superintendent here who's also been trying to address some of your issues for the last 2 weeks. If you want him to respond, I can tell you that Pleasant Street, as soon as we hired our highway superintendent, was the first street to put on for construction season, which will be next spring.
Oh, that's good. That's my third question.
That wasn't because
about the road.
No, that was his own observance. And
because I was told that they redid that road a couple years ago, but then weren't able to finish it or something. Is that true? That was just from one of the neighbors on Pleasant Street. No.
I don't think Pleasant Street's been touched.
Okay.
But our highway department manager does have some concerns about Pleasant Street, and we can have him address them.
They redid Langdon last year, didn't they? I used to have a place on
We
Langdon.
only put a base layer on Langdon, but as relevant to Pleasant Street, we should have our highway manager speak on it.
Yeah, Peter, do you have any...
On some of the damage on Pleasant Street, this year we're going to fix that bad spot on the corner of Pleasant and Langdon. And next year during the construction season, we were going to do that portion from Langdon to Avery.
Oh, that's excellent news.
Which is the worst part of it.
I'm pretty sure that everybody's going to be excited about that because as soon as it rains, there's a puddle the size of, I don't know, my son could probably go swimming in it.
No, we did put up 25-mile-an-hour signs.
That's awesome.
We put up 7 signs from Broadway to Russell.
That's great.
So we're...
That's one thing I think we're discussing. That's the speed limit on all the side roads in Plymouth is 25 miles an hour. So, I mean, I'm just putting that out there now in case people don't realize it.
Yeah.
And then the last question I have is, are there time limits for dumpster pickups? Because, you know, a lot of the houses there have dumpsters, and so then that waste management dude will come.
No, they schedule them once a week.
And so it's just whenever?
Yeah, whenever the cycle is. I think they're trying to do, the house on the corner of Langdon and Pleasant has just moved a dumpster out of sight, which I think is an improvement.
We have one across the street from us. I think it's next to your house, and that will come at 5, anytime from 5:30 in the morning to...
Yeah, the high school gets picked up around 4:30, I hear that. 4:30.
We have tried looking into that in the press, and we didn't get anywhere with it.
And what was the weight limit? The answer to the weight limit?
There is no weight.
There is none?
No, you don't even have a frost limit up there, do you? Or is there a frost limit in town? Your winter weight? No.
Well, I appreciate your hearing my concerns, and you know, I'm just trying to be an active member of my community and raise awareness. Primarily, I'm a teacher at university, so you know, anything I can do.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I got
Appreciate
a
it.
meeting, so.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Gosney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
How are you?
Good evening.
Good evening.
And members of the board. I'd invite 2 other individuals to join me up here. I have with me Paul Phillips, who is the vice chair of the Energy Committee, and I believe you all know Representative Mary Cooney.
We have your letter.
I wanted to just take a few moments to set the stage in a way that I hope you will provide some context, one for Kelly, one for yourself, some context on what we'd like to bring to your attention this evening. In the green folder, you have two pieces of additional information to supplement what we provided to you last week. The first is the news article that appeared following a July Select Board hearing at which Steve Whitman and myself appeared in front of the Select Board at that time and brought the subject of creating an energy committee here in the town of Plymouth to the attention of the board. At that time, the Select Board made the determination that they would prefer to have this in an advisory capacity and not be part of the structure. And if I recall correctly, which you were part of that, and I believe, Charles, you were part of that too.
Yeah.
So since that time, over the past 2 years, we've been operating as a strictly volunteer program, in which both Mr. Whitman and myself, as chairs, have come before you with information from time to time to keep you apprised. And since this past March, we've had the opportunity with Darrell to be the selectman's rep to our committee. To give you a sense of the expertise and the quality of the individuals who have stepped up and are part of the Energy Committee, we have furnished you with short bios of 9 of the 11 members of our committee to give you a sense of the commitment and the quality that you have working on behalf of the town on a volunteer basis. I think you'll find it impressive to see that. There have been a number of successes this committee has had on behalf of the town over the last couple of years. Things like the anti-idling at the schools, up at the transfer station, bike racks downtown, the greenhouse gas inventory that was undertaken through a grant that the committee was able to secure, working with town facilities, the more recent work that's been going on with individuals on the committee such as Bob Reels. And by the way, we do have 4 other members of the committee who are sitting out here in the audience this evening. At last year's town meeting, we put forth a petition that encouraged the town to look at high efficiency buildings in the future for town infrastructure improvements, more maintenance activities. So there's just been a number of successful things that we've been able to bring to your attention and for the town to consider. We believe there's another great opportunity to strengthen what has been occurring for the last couple of years with the Volunteer Energy Committee. And I'm going to turn it over to Representative Clooney and to our Vice Chair, Paul Phillips. And we're going to step you through what we think highlights why this is such a great opportunity for your consideration.
Thank you, Ray. House Bill 189 came to my committee. I'm the chair of the Municipal and County Government Committee at the House. And it came, I have a letter here for you that says last year. It's really this year, filed last year. And it was received very well. And it was supported with great enthusiasm by many people representing the energy committees across the state. 94 towns out of 234 cities and towns in this state have founded energy committees. This indicates a commitment of many dedicated citizens to the concept that even small towns and individuals can work to make a difference in our energy consumption. I provided you with letters of support that the Municipal and County Government Committee received from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, the Office of Devine and Millett, representing New Hampshire Electric Co-op, and Jim O'Brien, selectman from Hopkinton, who is on Governor Lynch's Climate Change Task Force. Eric Stelzer from the Office of Energy and Planning testified in support of the bill. I believe Jim's letter outlines the benefits of supporting the formation of the energy commissions as opposed to just keeping the informal energy committees. As funds become available through federal programs and grants and revolving funds, the ability of the energy commissions to receive the funds as an agent of the town will expedite the process of putting those funds to work as quickly as possible. There is a safeguard in the bill to prevent the commission from acting without the Select Board's knowledge or approval on receiving or expanding funds over $500, and it would also require a public hearing for that. Our committee voted this bill ought to pass, and it was passed on the floor by a voice vote on 3/11/09. The Senate passed it with amendment, a slight amendment, on 5/20/09, and House Bill 189 was signed by the governor on 5/20/09, and I believe it should be supported by this select board.
We're here today because the statute just took effect yesterday, and so it authorizes towns to establish municipal energy commissions, and we wanted the opportunity to come to you as early as possible in the process. Today is the first full day that the statute's in place. The new statute does require, before a town can establish these commissions, that there be a vote at town meeting, and so our goal, with your support, is to put a warrant article before the voters next March. But before that happens, obviously we want to have a dialogue with you, because we know there'll be a number of questions. We're hopeful we can provide answers and work with you toward this goal of getting a warrant article before the voters in March. Last week I provided you with a set of frequently asked questions that is intended to address some of the structural components of the statute, as well as any concerns or some concerns you might have. But basically, we want to start the ball rolling at the earliest opportunity so that we can work with you over the next several months and put this proposal together for the voters. So that's why we're here tonight, and we'd be happy to entertain any questions you have.
This, by the looks of it, involves the commission. Their duties are related to the municipal energy use rather than as so you're talking about municipal buildings and...
That's right. We're talking about both municipal energy costs and usage. And the idea is to be an advisory commission working with the Select Board and the other municipal structures in town to review the usage and the cost, and then to make recommendations over time. But that's the intent of the statute.
Is the funding for the reviews paid for by the town, or is it,
Well, the statute contemplates that there can be appropriations from the Select Board, but it also contemplates, I think specifically, that there would be an earmarked municipal energy fund that would receive any appropriations you might make. You're not required to make those, obviously, but the Energy Commission can also receive gifts, and there's a provision in the statute that provides for the Office of Energy Planning and regional commissions to develop programs which we hope will include some funding, which we would also be able to apply for, and that would be able to go into that energy fund as well. So there could be a variety of sources of funds, and the idea is that up to a certain threshold, which is $500, the Energy Commission could use those monies and make expenditures and that sort of thing. But above that threshold, would have to come to you with a request for approval. So I think what the statute does, which is a very good thing, is it provides the structure that we believe is needed for the commission to operate in terms of having a fixed number of members, in terms of office with the rotating membership and that sort of thing. But also it provides accountability to the Select Board so that we have to answer to you. We have to answer to you, on an ongoing basis in terms of reports, as well as getting your approval for any extraordinary expenditures above that threshold limit. So I think it really creates a nice balance, and that's the opportunity that we see in this statute.
I think if I could draw your attention, Mr. Chairman, to the bottom of page 2 of the act itself. It does go beyond just the resources that are operated and owned by the town. If you look at paragraph B there, it's quite comprehensive, including looking at zoning practices. Recognizing it was that comprehensive, we undertook very early on discussions with the chair of the planning board and the town planner, just to get a sense of what the participation might be, or if you will, the collaboration might be between the two groups. And the feeling of the current Energy Committee members is that we would be an advisory group to the planning board as they look at any potential updates to either the master plan or to any of their either site plan reviews or potentially zoning things that they might want to put in front of the town. But it does raise the opportunity to now looking at zoning that could be used to influence the use of energy within the town. It goes beyond the assets of the town itself.
So you'd be working, in addition to the select board, they'd be working with the school board as well, because
I think they would be pretty comprehensive in all of the entities that have responsibility that oversee the use of energy.
didn't we have a recommendation or a request for an audit recently? $17,000 or whatever.
Not in regards to Energy Committee.
I thought it was an audit. Yeah, it was an energy audit.
That was much cheaper than that.
We had a CDBG grant was audited for that amount of money.
Yeah.
So one way of looking at this commission as well, from sort of the day-to-day budgetary standpoint, would be a standing audit board that could help help turn money back into the general fund by looking at different departments, fire, police, and on a real-time basis, turning money back in. Is that one possible function? So you're talking planning.
That's certainly a
zoning.
possibility. I mean, I think the idea is to have a part of the town government be dedicated and focused to energy consumption and energy costs.
As far as dollar amounts and audits, that'll be taken care of during our own town audit.
Okay, so I mean, not so literal as financial audit, but in terms of how much power is the police department using? Well, if we use these bulbs, it's less, and dollar for dollar. So many times, I think the perception is that this is very long-term, and so planning and zoning are, they're mid-term maybe, but in the short term, within a fiscal year, you can say, we expect to turn back $50,000 in efficiencies. So it's reasonable to say in a year that innovations were made. So the problem with our budget cycle now is it is so long. And so like a couple of years ago, so somebody can make a projection based on oil, but let's say there's a much cheaper alternative that comes into play three months into the budget cycle. There's nothing, we have no capability in municipal structure to capitalize on that efficiency. This lets us do that inside of a budgetary year, and so
it's the exact same thing that happened with the Conservation Commission, which is why we went the same direction with the Conservation Commission. It frees up their hands to be able to take in money, take in funds, not go through the hoops that they have to go through legally for us to even be able to do that, and then it gives them a method of spending those funds through the authority of the Board of Selectmen. So there's no authority lost that we have for the Board of Selectmen. But it does free up their funds, frees up their hands in being able to maintain extra money within their accounts, similar to the Conservation Commission. If somebody would like to give this committee a large gift, right now there's really not a good way for them to accept it nor to spend it.
But this can turn us a profit very in short terms. If you're just looking at short-term profits, this could generate more than bringing grant money in.
Savings and stuff.
Right, and savings. Yeah. We can stop spending during a year.
The Department of the DES was very enthusiastic about this as a way to funnel money from monies that they get from the federal government. It was a way to say, okay, we can place it here, or we can, so that it doesn't get kind of lost.
Well, this makes it an easier conduit to,
right.
And that's what would benefit this community.
Even with the Conservation Commission, we were actually able to eliminate like 90% of their budget. They were able to get funds from outside sources, apply for grants themselves, which they're not eligible to do right now.
But you see, far more than that, far more than self-sustaining. This is so relevant to, this is in every department's budget. Every department spends on energy. There's conservation. It's, Anyway, I'll stop. I'm for it.
Yeah,
Well, it is Paul spoke to, our principal focus tonight was to make sure that we really acquainted you with this opportunity with the hope that you would want to invite us back perhaps at a public hearing on this matter as you further considered it. And the ultimate goal is we'd love to have the select board actually place this on the warrant article, excuse me, the warrant as a warrant article for the next town meeting.
I'd be very interested in helping with that as, and I'm interested in the language of the warrant, or in the language of the structure of this whole thing, looking short-term as well as long-term, so inside the budget cycle, long-term. So, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we work towards putting a warrant before the town in March towards a Energy Commission.
I'll second that.
We have a motion to put a Board of Selectmen warrant article for town meeting for set up an Energy Commission. Any discussion?
Yeah, I think Ray has a good idea with the public, maybe having a public hearing, just to get a little input on it.
Yeah, we
look into it a little bit.
We could have
more.
a public hearing, we could set one up, can't do it at the next meeting, because we're already, but I think...
You could do it in November.
No, November?
Yeah.
I'd love to have it sooner, but...
November.
Well, since you'd rather have it in October, Ray?
November.
I'd rather have it in November.
No, I meant in November, right. That would be easier for us to
because
have.
we're already,
Something
the 13th, we're committed.
I don't believe that bumps us into any
If you just stay in touch with me, Ray, and
landmine stuff.
November 9 is...
No,
See,
no, still.
What's the schedule?
Plenty of time.
Let's see what we've
I think
got.
what you would have at that November meeting, excuse me, would be the draft of the warrant article.
The 9th or the
public
23rd.
comments on perception of it.
Okay.
Might have some other examples. We're probably the first town that's jumped into this since it's the first day. There may be others that we can draw on too.
That's right. Our hope over time is that we'll have other municipalities sharing information with us as they go forward with their own plans. So that's why we expect to be able to report back to you with some more information later on.
So
Early or late November?
Any time in November suits you, sir.
9th to the 23rd.
November 9th.
9th, yeah.
Either date is fine.
Really?
9th.
Okay.
Ninth
So
it is,
we'll
then?
set up a public hearing on at the BOS meeting on the 9th.
And Paul's suggestion was that we would have maybe a draft of the warrant article, right? So we can get comment on it. And the motion's on the floor, so we still haven't voted yet, right?
We have a motion to, oh, wait a minute,
You have a motion and seconded.
we have a motion for the public hearing, right?
Yes.
On the 9th.
Motion for a warrant article.
Towards the warrant, so.
All right. We have a motion to a warrant article, Board of Selectmen warrant article
Work towards it, so.
to work towards a warrant article, Board of Selectmen warrant article, and do I have a second? Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion from you?
Good night.
A motion to support a warrant article. Because you still have to have a public hearing on it.
What was the motion to work towards? So
Work-
we'll draft
okay.
it.
Well, why don't we have the public hearing before we have the motion?
That's part of working
Towards it.
Mr. Chairman.
Towards it.
Plus, we'll have a draft of the warrant article, so people can have comments on it.
So the public hearing, we'd bring a draft of the warrant article. Work it over.
Ray will, but
Yeah.
you will be working towards having a warrant article for the March meeting.
All right. Would you like to make a motion?
He did.
I would like to say yay. Would you like to say yay? Yes.
It's sort of like approving the signs that have already been approved. But all right, we have a motion for the board to promote a warrant article for establishing an energy commission. Do I have a second?
I seconded it.
The motion has been made and seconded for the board to promote a warrant article for an energy commission. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Now, we'll establish a public hearing date of the 9th of November. At what time, Paul?
6:30.
6:30. Mr. Gosney will grace us with his presence and the draft of the warrant.
With your permission, Mr. Chairman, we'll also prepare that draft sufficiently in advance that will allow the
We'll get a chance to read it.
town administrator
Okay.
the benefit of his wisdom.
Gives me a chance, Ray, to run it past the DRA, to make sure that we have everything right.
Municipal Association.
Yeah. Yeah. Citizen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thanks.
Mr. Shu, you want to do the fiscal year?
Fiscal year budget review. Fiscal year budget. I presume you are the,
Ask me what fiscal
Operative.
year would take place?
pardon?
What was the question?
The end of fiscal year?
End of year fiscal budget review.
Lost you, Charlie, a while ago.
Thanks.
In the fiscal year and budget review. Does everybody have this packet?
Yeah.
.99% good news.
You're going to give us that first?
As we
or-
went into the tax rates, your first page that you have in front of you,
All right.
we had our audit. The auditor has confirmed that the town is still very healthy, which doesn't always seem to be a good thing anymore, but as far as applying for grants. We went into our tax rate setting, and you'll see it on that first page, where they showed us at 17%, almost $2.2 million for our unreserved fund balance. And they like to see between 5%, 17%, and more towards the middle, if anything. At that tax rate setting, you took the $2,198,000 and we lowered it to 1.4%, $1.4 million. If you turn to page 2 of the packet, mine's not highlighted in yellow, but I believe yours may be. If you look down at the bottom, second line from the bottom, I'm sorry, third line that has $2,261,000.
Unreserved fund balance, C.
You will see that our reserve fund balance has gone from the 1.2 million, 14% level, back up to the 17% level, to actually a little bit more money than,
2.261.
yep, about another 60,000 plus extra than what we went into last year's tax rate setting. So we achieved our goal, and now I'll tell you how we got to that goal. The third page in your package, way on the bottom, we have projected with the departments and the state and your meals and tax and everything else, a revenue income of $3,542,000, and we hit our goal at 100%. We came within $7,000. We're $7,000 more revenue than a little close for comfort. The Department of Revenue loves seeing that figure, to be able to get that kind of accuracy, but it wasn't an easy year for us to be able to succeed at that. And a couple of reasons that we were able to do that, we were able to take $100,000 from our budget that was not expended on Kelly's salvage cleaning, put that back into our fund. We were able to take, in return from our budget, $117,000 from our health benefits and return that back to the fund. And then on your next page, all the way to the right column, down the bottom, the departments were returned almost $800,000 from their budget, $794,763. With all that said, the difference between going into this tax rate setting versus last year's tax rate setting is all the unknowns. Not knowing how much the Department of Revenue will offset the schools. Not knowing completely how much money we may receive in revenues from the Department of Revenue.
Have we made any decisions about level funding this year?
Yes, the budget okay, if we want to jump to the budget process. Budget process is we are staying level funded.
But in this current year, do we have a policy?
This year is, I can explain that better if we just get past the last page. I can start showing you where we can help offset the shortcomings on the state and any school increases. The current year's budget that we're in now is $72,000 less than the budget that we were in last year. So the town turned in this past March a lower budget than the previous year. That will help us. My MS4 projected revenue is $300,000 higher than what we went into the tax rate setting last year. That's due to the fact that we've applied for a lot more grant money this particular year that we're anticipating getting that, especially in road improvements. We've applied for over $400,000 in road improvements. Another way that we could offset it, our tax base on that very last page in your book has gone up a couple of $1 million. And that'll be another $40,000 to $50,000 that we can put as an offset. And I say put as an offset, that'll already be factored into the page that you're going to be making your decisions on. The Department of Revenue will already take that into consideration. At number one, we asked for a lower budget on behalf of the town. Number two, our tax base has grown, not significantly. $2 million sounds like a lot of money. But you have to remember, you have to break that down into 2,000 units, $1,000 units, and then you multiply that out by $17.95, and that's how much money it would help us. Where we begin to start to lose money at that tax rate setting is when we start to talk about abatements that took place this year, which is up around $135,000 that we've had to pay back.
Do you have any idea what the school is going to end up?
No, we are waiting on the Department of Revenue.
They were talking $7,000 or $8,000.
It now no longer comes, the school's budget did go up, but it does not come down to the school budget going up. It now comes down to how much does the state offset the school's budget.
Yeah.
And that's an unknown number right now.
They don't have any idea at this point.
No. We have requested a tax rate setting from the Department of Revenue. I'm imagining hopefully it'll take place the end of October like it did last year, I believe on the 24th of October last year.
So raises and that kind of thing in this current budget year, how are we accounting for those? Operating budget, how, like where's the...
This current year?
Yeah.
None of this current year is a factor in your tax rate setting.
Yeah.
You already voted on it in March.
Yeah.
Right, we already decided how we're going to do it. It's you're $72,000 lower than the previous year.
Yeah.
We now begin working on next year's budget.
Right, and we're projecting that based on...
We're projecting that budget, right.
Based on what's happening right now.
On this one to stay level funded.
And we made that decision to level, like, I guess what I'm getting, we're moving to the next budget, but we can only do that based on this one.
You haven't made that decision. I made it as a town administrator. We've had discussions on it.
So how does that get, so next year, how do we keep this going, basically? So we keep...
It's now been taken out of our hands. We've been offsetting.
So have we been offsetting or have we been cannibalizing our, you know what I mean? So if you're...
Every year we raise an extra $900,000, and every year we take that $900,000 and offset other entities.
Raise, you mean, is that getting turned back?
We
raise 900. The revenues from the...
Either in revenue, extra revenue,
yeah,
or money's being sent back to the unreserved fund by the departments. We always manage to go up $800,000 to $900,000 each year. It would be nice for us to be able to use that towards our own budget, but we always use that as an offset. Or else the tax rate would not be at 17.95.
Right, but if we level again and raises and that kind of thing go up, we're going to end up seeing a big spike eventually, aren't we? Because
one thing that we're already in the hole is we're not going to get the money that we received.
Right, for 400, we're going to be out 400,000.
Right, we received that in this past fiscal year.
Yeah.
We are not going to receive it in the current fiscal year.
Yeah, so as our... Yeah.
Well, we've budgeted it.
And you'll see that reflected at your tax rate setting.
Because if our projections are based on, our projections going forward are based on a level funding and revenues, we're gonna lose. There's probably only so long you can keep the level funding when you've got raises. We're doing COLA there. The revenues they come and they go. So mutual aid, lower calls means we get fewer. The revenue may go down, and then we're losing 400.
Right. The budget's not going to change. The budget's going to go down $72,000.
Has already done that. So
but for the year that we're in, all the way up until June 30th of next year.
Yeah.
So you have to take the budget. The budget's not going to impact the tax rate.
Our sources have gone down. We don't know how much, but our sources are going down.
For revenues.
Right. For revenues one's definitely down. State's definitely down.
Right. That's what's going to impact. And how much any other entity went up with their budget.
Others are already, say it again, however much any other entity went up?
With their budget.
You mean?
If the school went up $150,000.
Right, during their...
Right.
During their cycle.
What I'm saying, you're not going to get as much bang for your buck out of the unreserved fund balance as you did last year. Everybody, not just the town, would have had to stay level funded. Everybody did not stay level funded. We did. We actually dropped $72,000. But that was not town-wide, so there's an impact there. That impact could theoretically get absorbed completely by the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue could also decide not to fund the rebate as much as they have in the past also.
So one of the problems is that what we've done over the years to be able to keep the tax rate at level funded is picked up school. The town has been able to stay level funded or under for the last 4 years.
School
hasn't been able to do that, so we've had to always offset it. And we didn't have to offset the school.
We've only had one year in the last 3 or 4 where the actual tax rate for school and county and town has gone down, I think.
School hasn't gone down.
Well, no, the combined, you add them all up. In other words, we've offset enough to cover the school and primarily
the town labor. I guess the town labor is not going down.
We've been offsetting everybody.
We've been able to offset
We've been offsetting everybody for 8 years.
Yeah. We've been able to control that stuff with controlling labor, controlling overtime, controlling all that, which would take...
So you get to a point at which, I don't know when that point is, but you get to a point at which you're down at bare bones.
Diminishing
level
return.
funding. And when you're using that as revenue, though, and then that stops being, like, once you're bare bones, once you're down to your bare minimum of labor costs, then you've been, and you're funding off of the increase, so, but the revenues are, you're plotting, you can profit off of your cuts, basically. You don't want to do that until you can't, and I'm just wondering, like, when is that you can't, you know what I mean? So when...
We're about there.
Yeah.
And so then what do you, is the strategy, what do you do?
Did you ask for help from the school?
Yeah.
That's what you asked for.
I think the county has backed off this time, so that's,
The county's taxes haven't gone up.
but the school taxes are,
When
but
will-
the high school went
Piece of the
down,
pie.
The town, the elementary school went up almost as much as the high school dropped. $270,000.
The elementary school went twice as high as the overall drop. I believe the overall was 300. I think we've all looked at it. The high school went down. You're talking about impact. We're talking impact dollars now.
5 years down the road.
When do we learn about the state offset to the school budget?
I don't know, I don't understand how, you know.
In a few weeks.
Well, after next week or something, you could sit down with Paul and he can show you how that cycle works. What we take and offset it with this year. We have to have that revenue for next year.
Yeah.
So he can show you how that works.
So what I'm trying to stay at 1795, everything we did last year, we have to do it again this year. The town's done that. It's turned in not the same budget as last year. It even went $72,000 lower. We've brought our unreserved revenue once again back up to the $2.2 million spot. What's going to change this year is when we go in with our new projections, we can't plug in the state's numbers like we used to. The school's budget did go up. So the high school went down and the elementary school went up. So we don't control that part of it. And there's a chance that if the state does not fund the school system with the same dollar amount every year, that impacts us.
And there's a public safety thing on the table. I mean, it's,
Library, public safety.
Right, that's not this fiscal year, right? That's the next.
I'm looking at, I'm not looking, I don't want to look
Right,
through the year. I want
this
to
is probably our last chance to try to stay at 1795.
I'm concerned that when you look at just the tax rate, you're operating year to year. We're there, we're 1795. That's an addiction to the wrong, long after I'm off the board. I don't want to see a spike. You know, so if the I'm concerned about the strategy. That's all. I'll definitely learn more, but.
Well, there's things that we couldn't anticipate that had we been given a few years' notice, there wouldn't be a spike, but everything's going to hit us at one time.
What are the chances of the state block grants and room and meals staying at the current levels for the next year, 11, 12?
It's a 2-year budget. The state has a 2-year budget. Whatever happens to us this coming year is going to happen to us the following year.
Yeah.
That's why it's until we get that state figure from how much of an offset they're going to do with the school, we can continue to speculate at this table, but you won't be able to tell.
You can imagine what the tax rate would be if we weren't a receiver town with the school.
Right.
I'll tell you about an irony that I believe you're going to see happen, and it truly is an irony. Our piece of the pie right now is $5.42. Whatever the state doesn't give us for revenue, even though it's the state's non-commitment to the town, our piece of the pie will go up, not the state's piece of the pie.
Yeah, right.
There's a chance that their piece of the pie may even go down because they're not meeting obligations that they had budgeted for.
A lot of unfunded mandates, too.
And with the way that piece of the pie goes up, that's that much less revenue we get to turn back as our tax rate. So our piece of the pie will increase, even though we didn't.
It's that kind of thing that I think, okay, you speculate and it's not a surprise then. It's like when Casino says 15 years in the making and we don't qualify because we're too healthy. It's like, well, if we'd been saving $200,000 a year for 15 years, we would be set anyway. We wouldn't need to, you know, I would like to see the...
and that's, Darryl, we started hoping that 8 years ago. That's why we started saying level funded. when we first started talking about safety complexes, the goal was to be able to put this money towards something like a safety complex. The only way you can't have and use your unreserved fund balance and not have to chase it next year is if you took $500,000 out of your unreserved and put it towards a project like those microphones, and next year you did not do that, then you've gained $500,000 chase money. If next year you put $500,000 towards another project.
Like how long can a capital project be open? So could you have said we're on a 10-year plan to, but it's all retrospect kind of thing, but can a capital reserve fund can be open for a very long time, can it?
Capital reserve fund has nothing to do with the unreserved fund. Nothing to do at all.
As a way to, well, it's all right. Yeah.
You can't use it to offset.
And I'm not talking about offsets, I'm talking about
funding a project.
Right now we need to get a thing done and the foundation is slipping from underneath us. Well, how can we prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future? Well, you can't really except to say, well, you're already a healthy town.
We did. So. We were up to $3.3 million, got in trouble with...
Right, but 3.3 doing nothing, 3.3,
no, we were doing nothing, but we can't save that kind of money in unreserved... We were at 20.
Have a capital project for the public safety?
No, we would have had to put it should have been saved in capital reserves.
So
it was in our unreserved fund balance. It put us at 20.
We paid for the station in cash if we had just said not relied. Is that, so if we had just saved $200,000 a year and put it in a capital project for that, we would have paid cash for it, right?
Yep.
That's.
Yep.
And your tax rate would have been whatever.
You wouldn't have been turning things back in.
Been going up. You know, I can remember when tax rate here was almost $40 a thousand.
But the bond that we could end up paying would be, so
At one point, Darrell, we were the number third or fourth highest taxes in the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah, when we moved here.
So we've done a good job to get 100th, I think, somewhere in there.
Bonding, any bonding we do now is going to be fairly favorable rates, isn't it? Although I've seen some municipal bond rates are kind of
ugly. Last year it was pretty nasty.
The landfill closure was done at a very good rate, around 2%. We pay $65,000 a year on a landfill closure. That was $1 million bond.
But we're looking, I'm talking that, like the fire police department bonding. Whatever we do at town meeting in March is going to be, should be fairly favorable rates. Although I don't know.
Right, but I don't know how much better than 2% you're going to get of that.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of issues there. You get the school that wants to bond 3.5. I mean, it's going to be interesting.
Well,
but I'd like to say, though, on this budget, that they've done an extremely good job and the department heads deserve a lot of credit for being able to trim those budgets and be able to return.
It's kudos to the department heads. The auditor and the Department of Revenue could not believe that within the department you've got almost $800,000 being returned. And that's them seeking grants, they started tightening up their belt the very first month because we got the fuel scare in the middle.
Yeah.
In the beginning, then in the middle we got we're not going to get the backing from the state. So they're underneath pressure throughout the whole fiscal year to get the best out of they could from their budget.
Well, I think they've done an outstanding job.
And then come forward in last March with a budget that was $72,000 lower than the budget that they were in.
Yeah. That's the thing, that their numbers don't lie, and I totally appreciate their bringing that money in, but the numbers that do lie are the state funds. So if you know the one close to you is reliable, and it's being reliable, and this one's going down, it's like, okay, I want to make sure, are you going to be okay? Are you going to be okay? Am I, you want to tend to the numbers that have been reliable and really shore those up.
In all honesty, the only reliable numbers that we have ever had in the past were the state numbers. That was a law passed years ago saying that meals and room taxes will come to the towns. Highway block grants will come to the towns. Shared revenue will come to the towns. Whenever we receive those letters, for a town administrator or a town manager, those were the easiest things to put into your MS4. They were guaranteed. They came with a state seal on it.
Right.
Those are now the most unreliable numbers.
Now it's an IOU.
legislature is...
But with that put aside, we could not have finished as strongly as we did despite what happens. I can tell you the good news is it takes $445,000 now for the tax rate to go up $1.
So even with the state? Even if
So we would have to be off by another $445,000 for the tax rate to go up $1.
Got it.
Now, something that could really help us if Teddy Mountain would explode out there.
Right.
I mean, that's a good...
It's our tax base now that Kate Biesiegel, Miriam, myself are trying to work on at this particular moment, building up the tax base. It did not help with the $135,000 in abatements.
Yeah.
That did not help.
Is that high because of the recent reassessment, or is that a fairly normal thing?
But we have switched our assessing person.
We had a lot of mistakes with that assessment. I don't know if they're mistakes, but they sure brought in the abatement application.
States did well. They said it was better than some towns.
Yeah, it's better than some towns, they said.
There are towns out there that are $1 million going towards the negative, where we want $800,000 to the positive, so.
All right.
In a different vein, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion based on the fact that Plymouth is becoming more important this season with as a public health emergency response area, and Paul's efforts with FEMA as an emergency manager. I'd like to make a motion that we secure our PBCAM broadcast servers even more and move to a position that will only allow download or pulling from secure public locations. So if someone wants to broadcast something, they will post it on a secure public server that the town would then pull the documents from for broadcast.
Second that.
We're tying up a loophole in our emergency system.
The PBCAM, this is a policy change with the PBCAM.
Right. On how people can acquire information from our site.
It's a better system to be pulling.
Right. Now, is this policy, who's going to write the policy?
I can do that.
Okay. All right. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Been moved and seconded that we tighten up our policy on the use of the PBCAM. Are those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You shall do it. You're going to write the... All right. Public comment. Everybody's left the room. Frank?
Yes. I got a question. On the airport improvement so-called plan, this airport improvement committee, I thought the committee was terminated in 89, 99 time frame, and that committee no longer existed. And if there's some kind of airport improvement program plan, is this going to be public or what?
There was a new committee established, Frank.
It was?
Yep.
Okay.
Fred Gould as chairman.
And where do they meet? When do they meet? I mean, it seems like it's very quiet.
Just check with Fred Gould, Colin McGiver.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Because he's much too polite to say this to you, I just wanted to make sure the record reflects accurately that the distinguished gentleman from Congressman Hode's office, last name is Chandler, not Taylor, as your agenda reflects.
Is that right?
He's much too nice and polite to let you know that, and I give him credit for that, and as well for credit for staying till the end of the meeting. I think that in itself is a first for a representative of an elected official.
If he were that polite, he would have changed his name in order to comply with
He changed his name before we had a...
Oh, I apologize.
We had a non-public
Trevor Taylor
work session. All right, we will so note that. Do we have any non-public?
Only if you want to continue on one personnel issue that we had discussed earlier, but maybe you've talked about everything that you want on that.
We've covered that pretty well, haven't we?
Yeah.
I think it's in my hands at this point.
With that...
There's none. There's no
non-public, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. You want to end it? You were the one who wanted to be out of here at 6 o'clock.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn.
And we have a second.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
Don't give me cookies. No more cookies.
Thanks, everyone.